Developing tonight, this is the scene now of the nation's capital. Shops and businesses boarded up. A lot of people expected to protest tomorrow. Supporters of President Trump will gather as Congress looks at certifying the 2020 presidential election. The president falsely claims the election was rigged in states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Some Republican lawmakers in both the House and the Senate have said they will vote against the certification. Dylan Thomas joins us live tonight in Windsor. And Dylan, this is a move most say will not change the result of the election.
Karen, a political sciences professor at Colorado State University, tells us no matter who you voted for, it is what it is. Joe Biden will be sworn in as president in just a couple weeks, adding there is no legal way to circumvent that outcome. This will be the first time we've seen anything to this proportion since the late 1800s.
For the first time, and in the most serious way, perhaps since the 19th century, some members of Congress are objecting to this certification of the Electoral College.
Matthew Hitt, an associate professor of political sciences at CSU, says the attempt by some Republicans to block the certification of the 2020 election is unprecedented.
There is no legal pathway.
Something even Republican Ken Buck agrees with.
That is Congress's job. It is not to second guess the state legislatures. It's not to second guess the Secretary of State or the governor's signature on those ballots.
But some Republicans, including Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, are promising to object.
I do not agree with the way that some of these states behaved, and I will do everything that I can to object to those states.
It's something that hasn't really been done since the election of Rutherford B. Hayes.
In the election of 1876, there was some disputes about who won. There were claims of voter intimidation, really nasty election.
While that may sound similar to today,
there are millions of voters who now believe that there was an unfair election. I think our job has to be to go in and do what the Constitution tells us, count the votes and render that.
Hitt says the Electoral Count Act of 1887 will hold firm in 2021.
It is extraordinarily, microscopically unlikely that anything could happen tomorrow that will change the outcome of this election.
While unlikely, not impossible for President Trump to get a second term in office, both chambers of Congress would have to agree on what's called a written objection. But with Democrats in control of one of those chambers, it's extremely unlikely. Reporting live in Windsor, Dylan Thomas covering Colorado First.
All right, Dylan, thank you.